Thanks. Thank you so much. As you said, I'm a PhD student in information studies. I'm doing a PhD project regarding the biometric study of sustainability science, and I'm using in my theory Pierre Bourdieu, sociology of science, and of course also Leydesdorff theories, Professor Leydesdorff theories. So it's a wonderful experience to be attending these sessions, and of course even I'm even more grateful for the chance to also share my thoughts about this dense and thought-provoking book that basically I will discuss from my background, which is information science and philosophy. So I know there are people with very different backgrounds in the audience. So a word of caution, I come from this perspective. So also I will basically discuss those chapters from this perspective. And while rereading the chapters and thinking about this presentation, I tried to consider ways to do justice to these two chapters. And I decided to focus on some central notes, some key themes that you will find on this slide, and I will try to let emerge in my presentation. And of course, those two chapters are basically hinging upon those key concepts. And in particular, now in the context of the session, we can also try to put basically in evidence the role of rational expectation in empirical philosophy of science. Those rational expectations that are driving forces of communication. So I will try to talk about the empiricism in the empirical philosophy of science presented in this book. And the first question is, what kind of empiricism do we find? And I believe the empiricism that Professor Leydesdorff presents for basically for us in the book, and in particular in those two chapters, and I'm connecting also with the previous session, is the horizon of meanings according to Husserl. And I would like to remind of the deep discussion basically regarding the difference between Edmund Husserl and Alfred Schutz, and in chapter 1, which is useful because in this, distinction, we can better understand the role of Husserl and the key concept of supra-individual intentionality that is key in those chapters. So, as we have seen in Husserl, the grounding basically is a logic intentionality, more suitable for the analysis of the meaning of science, whilst the interest of Schutz is the grounding in terms of life words, in terms of everyday life. So we have different interests, intellectual interests in Husserl and Schutz, and I really appreciate how this was evidentiated, put in chapter 1. But what we find here is the logic nature of intentionality as basically the condition for the intentionality according to those theories of a supra-individual intentionality, it means that in the horizon of meanings, some meanings are more meaningful than others. And what I mean by that, some potential meanings are more probable it can be actualized as future meanings. So we have the potentiality and actualization of meanings in this horizon. Okay, so we have meanings that are more likely to be communicated, shared, and also opposed by other meanings. So the perspective, from the perspective of agents or actors, becomes a perspective of communication in terms of this discursive knowledge. And the whole discussion that we find in chapter 3 regarding blur and action network tier end, those the discussion and the dialogue between Professor Leydesdorff and blur and and action network theory is basically, or in my view, to be understood as in relation to the issue of asymmetries, which make some meanings more probable. Okay, so it's not reflexive in terms of it's not symmetrical as blur proposed, but we have here some kind of criticism that in my opinion is quite also similar to Pierre Bourdieu's criticism in his last book, the last basically lessons at the Collège de France. I found similar criticism of blur and also in Bourdieu. And I think these criticisms are not unrelated to the issue of the weight of meanings. Some meanings weight more. And in bibliometrics, in scientometrics, we have this issue of weighting. The weight of meaning reflects in, for instance, the analysis of core publication, core documents, or from the semantic perspective, the themes that are emerging in those discourses. I can also say that we have maybe even the possibility to expand from scientometrics also to weighting in information retrieval, for instance. The weights that you are associated, for instance, to documents, where some meanings in documents weight more and are those meanings that make the documents retrieved or retrievable. For instance, in Salton and in that kind of information retrieval tradition. And I think from the perspective of conceptual organization of scholarly fields, we found very useful the concept of rational expectation. And beliefs can be symmetrical, expectations are asymmetrical. They stimulate the reproduction of certain discourses and prevent the communication of meanings opposed to pre-existing rational expectation. So I think this is a take-home, very important take-home, all this discussion of rational expectations. And also here, I've basically put in bold where we see probably like more than anywhere else, this this conceptualization of rationalized expectation. But when we talk about meanings and their weight, we need to know how to operationalize this, how to make the philosophy of science empirical, and how to sustain the study of horizon of meanings with data. Bibliometric or scientometric operationalization offer the chance of measurement, of empirical operationalization. And communication at this supra-individual level, so the level of supra-individual intentionality is hierarchical. I would say in the meaning that reminds me of Michel Foucault, Archaeology of Knowledge, which, as we know, became Genealogy of Power it's because of specific knowledge and power precondition that some discourses, some scientific discourses are possible, such as the discourse, scientific discourse on illness, medicine, and so on. And previous, what I found very crucial in those chapters, the use of the word symbolic value and the concept of sedimentation of meanings, which basically determines what Michel Foucault calls the rarity. Not all meanings, all discourses are possible, and we have a fight between discourses as well. In Foucault, another reference that, and just here to present some connection, another reference I would say that it could be put here in a dialogue with Leydesdorff is could be Bateson for Bateson, and the concept of schismogenesis. When the difference in communication become incommensurable, conflict is inevitable. So we know in Bateson, this is a level of individuals, the level of states, but can be put at supra-individual level from this perspective of discursive knowledge in terms of schismogenesis between paradigms. So I really appreciate how the interpretation in terms of discursive knowledge of paradigm shifts can be interpreted in this way. And also we have schismogenesis between meanings, rationally expected meanings. Okay, so we have these shifts in scholarly fields. And the emergence and decline of meanings are based on, of course, this evolutionary and schismogenic nature of concepts or theoretical constructs. And going towards, I think, to the end of the presentation, according to my biological clock, I don't know if it corresponds to external time. I think we are, I'm going towards the end. We start to fully comprehend something that is coming much later in the book, the dualistic ontology. So in other terms, we have to look for the software, for the software, for the meanings to understand the effect of discursive systems on other discursive systems, but also on non-discursive systems. So we have this almost a structuralistic approach here. And I would say I really loved basically the reference here to basically Marx, what happens in the passage from commodity money, commodity to money, commodity money. We have the domain of immaterial that takes over the material, and we have the alienation as a consequence. In fact, economics is one of those fields that, for instance, Jerry Fodor called special science. The laws of those fields cannot be explained by the laws of physics. This is why he opened Jerry Fodor the perspective of the mental domain, not reducible to the physical domain. So I think even this is something that is going to be discussed much later in the book. Even now, we can start, reflecting upon the dualism that we see as underlying on ontology in the book. With this, I will stop, apart from some reference here, I will stop my presentation. I don't know if I've been too fast or if it's okay. And I would like maybe to ask you, your reflection from in this regarding those words here, for instance, or what we have been talking about, or I've been talking about. And I stop sharing.